On July 27, 1981, 6-year-old Adam Walsh was shopping with his mother, Reeve Walsh, at the Sears department store in the Hollywood Mall, located in Hollywood, Florida. While his mother browsed, Adam was allowed to play at a nearby video game kiosk. At some point, a group of older boys reportedly got into an argument over who could play next, causing a store security guard to ask them to leave. Adam, possibly confused or afraid, was seen walking out of the store with them. Moments later, he was gone. Reeve searched frantically, but Adam was nowhere to be found. When she asked store employees, she was told that the security guard had asked a group of children to leave, but no one realized Adam had not returned to his mother. The store made announcements over the PA system, yet no one came forward. Hours later, police were notified. The search for Adam had begun. Law enforcement immediately initiated a widespread search operation. Flyers with Adam's photo were distributed throughout the city, and volunteers joined officers in combing through neighborhoods, parks, and wooded areas. The Hollywood Police Department set up a command center, fielding calls and potential sightings from the public. Helicopters scanned the area, while divers searched nearby canals and lakes. Despite extensive efforts, no solid leads emerged. The case soon attracted national media attention, amplifying the urgency, but also overwhelming investigators with false tips and misleading information.
John Walsh stood on a car asking people not to give up hope.
We've searched and searched for Adam, and we haven't found a body, so everybody thinks he's alive. We do too. And we feel that since you people have searched so hard, the best thing we can do now is get these flyers in everybody's hands, because the police are so frustrated. Nobody's really come forth, and the clues that we have, really, we haven't come up with anything substantial.
Adam's mother, Rene Walsh, says the new strategy in the search is to expand it beyond Hollywood.
The most important thing now is to get that the people can do is to get the flyers out of the area. Now they have to use their own detective, their own senses to think of their own ideas. I don't want them to wait for someone to tell them what to do.
The reward for information leading to the whereabouts of Adam Walsh is now $50,000. Spiro.
Days turned into weeks, and the Walsh family held on to hope. But with each passing moment, the reality of Adam's fate grew more grim. 2 weeks later, on August 10th, 1981, the search came to a devastating end. Fishermen discovered partial remains of a young boy in a canal near Vero Beach, Florida. DNA tests later confirmed it was Adam Walsh, but his rest of his body was never recovered. The Walsh family was shattered, but their grief soon turned into a relentless pursuit of justice. For years, the case remained unsolved. In 1983, serial killer Otis Toole, an associate of notorious murderer Henry Lee Lucas, confessed in 1983 to Adam's abduction and murder. He claimed he lured Adam into his car outside the Sears store, drove him to an isolated location, and later took his life. He claimed his motive was purely opportunistic, as he had a history of abducting and harming children, often acting on impulse and sadistic tendencies. However, inconsistencies in his statements, his tendency to recant, and the loss of key evidence, including Toole's car, made it difficult to formally convict him. Despite Toole's multiple confessions and later recantations, authorities officially closed the case in 2008, naming him as Adam's murderer. But justice came too late. Toole had died in prison in 1996. Fueled by heartbreak and anger, Adam's father, John Walsh, turned his personal tragedy into a national movement. He became an advocate for missing and exploited children, pushing for reforms in law enforcement and the justice system. His efforts led to the passage of the Missing Children's Act of 1982, which was the first federal law to address missing children cases by requiring the FBI to maintain and document missing children reports in the National Crime Information Center (NCIC) database. This act marked a significant step in formalizing law enforcement's response to child abductions and disappearances. This was followed by the Jacob Wetterling Crimes Against Children and Sexually Violent Offender Registration Act of 1994, which established guidelines for tracking sex offenders. In 1996, Megan's Law amended the Jacob Wetterling Act by requiring community notification of registered sex offenders. The Protect Act of 2003, which included the National Amber Alert System, was signed into law to enhance rapid response efforts in child abduction cases. Finally, in 2006, the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act further strengthened sex offender registration by establishing the Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act, SORNA. In 1988, John Walsh launched America's Most Wanted, a show dedicated to tracking down fugitives and recovering missing children. The show went on to capture over 1,200 criminals, proving the power of media in law enforcement. Adam's tragic story forever changed how missing children cases were handled, thanks to John Walsh's advocacy. There are now Amber Alerts, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and improved police protocols. Though Adam's life was cut short, his legacy continues to protect children across the nation. From an unspeakable tragedy came hope, change, and justice. October 22nd, 1989, an evening that changed the course of history for a small town in Minnesota and for missing children cases across the United States. This is the tragic case of Jacob Wetterling. It was a cool autumn evening in St. Joseph, Minnesota. 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling, a boy who loved sports and adventure, and his younger brother Trevor, along with their friend Aaron Larson, were returning home after renting a movie from a nearby convenience store. They had taken their bikes along a dark rural road, just as they had many times before. But this night would be different. A man dressed in dark clothing, wearing a mask, and armed with a powerful weapon, appeared out of nowhere. He ordered the boys to lie face down in a ditch. Then he asked each of them their age. After learning their ages, the masked man told Trevor and Aaron to run and not look back. Jacob was not so lucky. He was taken, disappearing into the night. That was the last time his family and friends would see him alive. A desperate search for Jacob began immediately. His parents, Jerry and Patty Wetterling, pleaded for their son's safe return. Law enforcement, volunteers, and the National Guard scoured the area, but there was no sign of Jacob. The abductor had vanished without a trace. Jacob's case quickly gained national attention. Flyers were distributed, his face appeared on the news, and his disappearance sparked fear among parents across America. Tips poured in, but none led to Jacob.
Thank you so much for being part of our journey for 26 years. We are so very, very grateful for all the work that has got us to where we are today. No one person can solve this case and bring Jacob home. It takes all of us working together to do that.
The one question that we have said for 26 years is, where's Jacob? Where is Jacob? And that's what we're always going to ask is, where is Jacob? That's what we've been trying to find for all of these years. And I really believe that somebody in this community knows. And we're the hope for all of your children, every child who's home safe today. It's our job as adults to build that world where children can be safe and grow up and follow their dreams. We will hope and pray that one day we will have the answer to the one question that we've asked forever. Where is Jacob? Somebody knows, and we're begging for those answers. Thank you.
For 27 years, the Wetterling family lived in agony, not knowing what had happened to their son. The case remained open, but no arrests were made. It wasn't until October 2015 that investigators received a crucial break. A suspect who had long been considered, Danny Heinrich, was finally linked to Jacob's case through DNA evidence in an unrelated child abduction case. Heinrich had a troubling past, having been a suspect in multiple child abductions and assaults in the 1980s. Authorities had questioned him early in the investigation, but without sufficient evidence, he remained free. Under pressure, Heinrich confessed. On September 6, 2016, Heinrich revealed that after abducting Jacob, he drove him approximately 30 miles from the abduction site to a remote area near Painesville, Minnesota, where he assaulted and shot him. He then buried Jacob's body in a field. Following his confession, he led authorities to Jacob's remains, which were found on September 1st, 2016. The decades-long mystery had come to a devastating conclusion. On November 21st, 2016, Danny Heinrich was sentenced to 20 years in prison on child pornography charges as part of a plea deal. Though he was not charged with Jacob's murder due to the statute of limitations, his confession provided closure for the Wetterling family and the community. The sentencing ensured that Heinrich would remain incarcerated, unable to harm any other children. For Jacob's family, the pain of losing their son was immeasurable, but at last they had answers. They turned their grief into advocacy, fighting for better protections for children and keeping Jacob's legacy alive. As part of their advocacy efforts, they established the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center, JWRC, a foundation dedicated to preventing child exploitation and abductions through education, advocacy, and support. The JWRC continues to provide resources to families and law enforcement, ensuring Jacob's legacy contributes to a safer world for children. Jacob Wetterling's story is one of heartbreak, resilience, and change. His abduction led to significant reforms in child protection laws, ensuring that his tragic fate would not be in vain. Today, his memory lives on, reminding us all to continue the fight for the safety of our children. On the evening of June 27, 1993, 11-year-old Jenna North left home to go rollerblading with friends near her North Fargo home. She never returned. Her disappearance sent shockwaves through the Fargo community and sparked one of the largest searches in North Dakota history. Authorities and volunteers searched tirelessly for Jeanna, but weeks turned into months with no answers. It wasn't until 1997, 4 years after she vanished, that the devastating truth came to light. Kyle Bell, the neighbor who lived kitty corner across the street, the man who had been installing lights on his pickup the night before, said he hadn't seen Jeanna. John had met him once before, a month earlier, when he walked across the street to borrow a wrench as the Norths were having a backyard barbecue on Memorial Day weekend. The man, Kyle Bell, struck John North as quiet and hardworking. But there was a hidden side to Bell, a side the Norths would soon learn all about. It didn't take long for suspicion to fall on Bell. 3 years earlier, he had served just 10 weeks of a 2-year prison sentence in South Dakota for child molestation, in Aberdeen released from parole in 1991. In interviews with the police, Bell denied any knowledge of Jeanna's disappearance, though he said he'd seen her around the neighborhood a few times. Investigators had nothing to connect Bell to the apparent crime. But then something happened that struck a rural Cass County resident as odd. Mary Hogland, who lived north of West Fargo, was driving on a county road when she saw a black pickup parked in the middle of the bridge over the Cheyenne River, with a man standing next to it, looking at the river. Tipped off about the strange encounter, authorities quietly searched the river. They found nothing. Bell gave police consent to search his pickup for Jeanna's hairs. He had earlier told police that she had never been in his truck, but as they were preparing to vacuum his cab, looking for hair or fibers, he volunteered that they probably would find hair strands that he'd once given Jeanna and a friend a ride from the Dairy Queen. Police asked Bell why he hadn't told them about the ride earlier, and Bell replied that he didn't think it was important at the time. In a follow-up interview later that day, Detective Jim Ledoux tried to coax Bell into saying something by laying out different scenarios and citing previous cases, including accidental deaths. But Bell didn't take the bait. He looked at Ledoux and said, "You had the bodies in those cases, isn't that right?" By fall, 3 months after Jeanna vanished, police announced they were drastically scaling back the search. The occasional leads surfaced and quickly evaporated, including a 6-hour search of the town of Devil's Lake, prompted by a psychic's tip. Then, in April 1994, Bell was charged with molesting 2 young girls, ages 8 and 3, as well as criminal trespass. Bell posted cash bail of $20,000 and then fled, failing to make a court appearance. In the publicity surrounding Bell's jumping bail, the North family learned for the first time their former neighbor was a convicted child molester. "How would you feel if this individual was in your neighborhood and you weren't notified?" John North asked. "It seems like the children are the ones getting the short end of the stick." He added, "The release of Kyle Bell on bail. I think this is outrageous." 4 months later, in a suburb of Denver, a police officer noticed North Dakota plates on a pickup truck stopped at a gas station. The officer ran a routine check and discovered the truck was registered to a wanted fugitive. Kyle Bell had run out of gas and luck. He refused to waive extradition, but soon was back in North Dakota to face the molestation charges involving the 8-year-old and 3-year-old girls. Police had strong evidence against Bell, and he pleaded guilty, hoping for another lenient sentence. For each of 3 molestation charges, Bell received a 10-year sentence to run consecutively for 30 years, followed by 10 years of supervised probation. Instead of being taken back to his jail cell, authorities whisked Bell to a jailhouse interview room. In exchange for a voluntary statement about Gianna's disappearance, an investigator told Bell he would recommend an unspecified sentence to run concurrently with his molestation sentence. Interrogators reminded Bell that the statute of limitations never expires in a murder case, and someday he possibly could face charges. Bell jumped at the offer to effectively serve the same sentence for 2 criminal cases. In a series of interviews over a period of hours, Bell confessed to abducting and killing her, claiming that he disposed of her remains in the Cheyenne River, which authorities were never able to recover. In the end, Bell's own incriminating words and a web of suspicious circumstantial evidence were enough to convict him of murder. On August 1999, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole to start in 2019 after his molestation sentences. However, 3 weeks later, on October 13, 1999, while being moved to a maximum security prison in Oregon, Bell escaped from a transport bus during a stop in New Mexico. On January 9, 2000, he was recaptured 88 days later in Dallas after he was featured on the national television program America's Most Wanted. Till today, more than 31 years later, Gianna's remains have never been found. She is still considered a missing person. Gianna's tragic case exposed critical gaps in how authorities responded to missing children, including delays in issuing public alerts, lack of coordination between law enforcement agencies, and inadequate policies for tracking repeat offenders like Kyle Bell. Her family and community pushed for reforms despite facing significant obstacles, including bureaucratic hurdles and initial resistance from law enforcement agencies reluctant to change existing protocols. They mobilized the community through public vigils, petitions, and media campaigns, gaining support from child advocacy groups and policymakers. Their persistence led to the establishment of the Jeanna Alert, a precursor to the modern Amber Alert system in North Dakota. The Jeanna Alert was created in response to Jenna North's case, spearheaded by her family and child advocacy groups in collaboration with North Dakota law enforcement. The system works by immediately notifying authorities and the public when a child is reported missing under suspicious circumstances, allowing for a rapid response and increased chances of recovery. While the Gianna Alert laid the foundation for modern child abduction alerts, it has since been integrated into the broader Amber Alert system, ensuring continued vigilance in child safety as of 2025. John North, father of Gianna, North said he is glad there are strong sex offender registration and notification laws now, but they didn't come in time for Gianna or Jacob. Though Gianna's life was tragically cut short, her legacy continues through the protections established in her name. The Gianna Alert has saved countless children, ensuring that no family has to endure the same nightmare without immediate action. In 1994, a tragedy in Hamilton Township, New Jersey, changed child protection laws in the United States forever. A 7-year-old girl named Megan Kanka was abducted, assaulted, and murdered by a convicted sex offender who lived just across the street. a man whose criminal past was unknown to the community. Her death led to the creation of Megan's Law, a system designed to protect children by making sex offender information available to the public. In the summer of 1994, Megan Kanka was like any other happy and playful 7-year-old. She lived with her parents, Maureen and Richard Kanka, in a suburban neighborhood where children played outside freely. Her family believed their neighborhood was safe, but what they didn't know was that a convicted sex offender lived just 100 feet away. The man who lived across the street was Jesse Timendiquas, a 35-year-old convicted sex offender with a history of violence against young girls. His first known offense occurred in 1979 in Piscataway, New Jersey. Timendiquas lured a 5-year-old girl into a wooded area near his home and attempted to sexually assault her. He was arrested and convicted of attempted aggravated sexual assault and sentenced to a sex offender treatment program. Just 2 years later, in 1981, he attacked another child. This time, he lured a 7-year-old girl into his car, drove her to a secluded location, and sexually assaulted her. For this crime, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but was released after serving only 2 years. After his release, Timendiquas moved into a home with 2 other convicted sex offenders in Hamilton Township. At the time, there were no laws requiring officials to notify residents about his past crimes. On July 29, 1994, Megan was outside playing when Timendiquas lured her into his house under the false pretense of showing her a new puppy. Once inside, he brutally assaulted and strangled her with a belt. A few hours later, he dumped her body in a wooded area, just a few miles from her home. When Megan didn't return home, her parents immediately called the police. A massive search effort was launched, with volunteers and law enforcement searching tirelessly. Within 24 hours, police discovered Megan's body. Shortly after, Jesse Timendiquas was caught when police noticed inconsistencies in his statements. Investigators found Megan's body in a wooded area, and forensic evidence, including fibers and DNA, linked him to the crime. Under pressure, he ultimately confessed. The community was in shock. How could a convicted sex offender have been living next door without anyone knowing? Megan's parents, Maureen and Richard Kanka, were devastated but determined to prevent this from happening to another child. They argued that if they had known about their neighbor's criminal history, they could have taken precautions to protect Megan. Fueled by grief and anger, the Kankas started a petition demanding that sex offenders be publicly identified. At one event held in Hamilton Township in the summer of '94, Maureen Kanka addressed the crowd saying, "I don't want to see this happen to any one of your children. I want you to scare your children. I want you to tell them. Don't sugarcoat it. Tell them what happens to little children by sex offenders." The Kankas promised hundreds of people they would fight for legislation to prevent other children from what Megan endured in the final moments of her young life. Their petition gathered over 430,000 signatures, gaining national attention. On October 31, 1994, New Jersey became the first state to pass Megan's Law. 2 years later, on May 17, 1996, President Bill Clinton signed Megan's Law into federal law, requiring all U.S. states to create sex offender registries and allow public access to the information. Megan's Law works in 3 key ways. Sex offender registration. Convicted. Sex offenders must register with local law enforcement when they are released from prison, providing details such as their name, address, photograph, fingerprints, and place of employment. They are also required to update their registration periodically and whenever they move to a new location. Community notification. The public must be notified when high-risk sex offenders move into their area, including detailed alerts through community meetings, law enforcement bulletins, and online databases to ensure awareness and preparedness. Online sex offender databases. Every state has a publicly accessible website where anyone can search for registered sex offenders by location, name, or crime. This ensures that parents, schools, and communities can take necessary precautions. Megan's Law has had a major impact on child protection. Parents can check if sex offenders live nearby. Schools and daycare centers use registries to screen employees and volunteers. Law enforcement can track and monitor high-risk offenders more effectively. The law has helped prevent crimes by raising awareness and accountability. More than 25 years later, Megan's Law continues to protect children and inform communities. Although Megan Kanka's life was tragically cut short, her story has helped prevent countless others from facing the same fate. To stay informed and protect your loved ones, visit www.nsopw.gov, the National Sex Offender Public Website. Megan's Law was amended by the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act of 2006, which strengthened sex offender registration and community notification requirements. On January 13, 1996, 9-year-old Amber Hagerman, born November 25, 1986, was riding her bicycle near her grandparents' home in Arlington, Texas. Along with her younger brother, Ricky, they were playing in the parking lot of an abandoned Winn-Dixie grocery store lot. Just a short distance from their grandparents' home, Ricky decided to turn back, but Amber stayed behind to continue riding. Moments later, a black pickup truck pulled up, and a man forcibly grabbed Amber before driving away. What started as a normal day turned into a nightmare that would change the way the nation responds to child abductions. A witness, 78-year-old Jimmy Kevill, saw Amber being abducted. From his backyard, he noticed a man in a black pickup truck forcibly taking her. He quickly reported the incident to the police, providing a description of the vehicle and suspect. Despite an immediate police response, Amber had vanished. For days, law enforcement and volunteers searched tirelessly, hoping to bring Amber home safely. Tragically, on January 17, 1996, 4 days later, her body was discovered in a creek, just a few miles away. She had been brutally murdered. The killer was never found. Amber's tragic death shook the nation. Her mother, Donna Williams, and the community demanded stronger measures to help find abducted children before it was too late. Donna, devastated by the loss of her daughter, once said, "I want to make sure no other parent has to go through what I have been through." Diana Simone, a Texas resident who had been following the news, contacted the KDMX radio station and proposed broadcasts to engage passersby in helping locate missing children. Her idea was picked up, and for the next 2 years, alerts were made manually to participating radio stations. In 1998, the Child Alert Foundation created the first fully automated alert notification system, ANS, to notify surrounding communities when a child was reported missing or abducted. Alerts were sent to radio stations as originally requested, but included television stations surrounding law enforcement agencies, newspapers, and local support organizations. These alerts were sent all at once via pagers, faxes, emails, and cell phones, with the information immediately posted on the internet for the general public to view. The first Amber Alert program was implemented in Texas in 1996, following Amber Hagerman's case. Soon after, other states adopted similar systems, with Oklahoma being the first state to approve and implement Amber Alerts statewide. Then Amber Alert system was officially approved on April 30th, 2003, when President George W. Bush signed the PROTECT Act into law, which established a national framework for Amber Alerts. AMBER stands for America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response. When law enforcement confirms a child has been abducted and is in immediate danger, an alert is issued. To qualify for an Amber Alert, specific criteria must be met. The child must be under 18 years old. Law enforcement must confirm that an abduction has taken place. However, it's important to note that some states, like West Virginia, have passed Schuyler's Law to eliminate it as a criterion for triggering an Amber Alert. The child is believed to be in imminent danger of serious bodily harm or death, though many law enforcement agencies have not used it as a criterion. There is sufficient information available to assist in locating the child and/or suspect. This may include the child's name, age, physical description, last known location, time of disappearance, suspect details such as name, age, physical description, relationship to the child, if known, and any associated vehicle, make, model, color, and license plate number. It is recommended that Amber Alert data immediately be entered into the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI National Crime Information Center. Text information describing the circumstances surrounding the abduction of the child should be entered, and the case flagged as child abduction. For incidents which do not meet Amber Alert criteria, the United States Department of Justice developed the Child Abduction Response Teams, CART, program to assist local agencies. This program can be used in all missing children's cases with or without an Amber Alert. CART can also be used to help recover runaway children who are under the age of 18 and in danger. Amber's legacy lives on. While her case remains unsolved, the Amber Alert system continues to save lives. It reminds us that when a community comes together, we can make a difference. If you have any information regarding Amber Hagerman's case, please contact Arlington Police Department at 817-459-5772 or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-843-5678.
Hi, I just wanted to let everyone know about my daughter, Amber. She was just 9 years old. She loved school. She loved riding her bicycle. She loved being a little mommy to her little brother, Ricky. I miss her every day, and she's just so full of life, and I want to know why. Why her? She was only a little girl. And to Amber's killer, I'm asking you today, please turn yourself in. Give Amber justice. Amber needs justice, deeply, deeply needs justice. And to anyone who has seen or heard anything about Amber's case, please come forward. Thank you.
If you see an Amber Alert, pay attention. You might save a child's life.